There were rules in the Romano house
You're
that
doing
everyone
so well
knew
today,
without being
sweetheart.
told.
I'm so
Don't
proud of
ask
you.
questions. Don't meet Dario Romano's eyes. Don't touch anything valuable. Don't speak unless spoken to. And above all, never, never approach the daughter. Maya Rivers followed every rule except the last one. She moved through the estate like water through cracks, cleaning rooms where men plotted violence, pressing uniforms stained with other secrets, preparing meals that might be someone's last. The Romano mansion wasn't a home, it was a fortress dressed in Italian marble and Renaissance art, where beauty disguised brutality and every surface could be scrubbed clean of evidence. For 3 months, Maya had been invisible. Perfect. Forgettable. Then came the afternoon she heard the crash. The sound of breaking glass with splintering, followed by a child's scream that didn't sound angry. It sounded like grief trying to claw its way out of a too small body. Maya was in the hallway, arms full of fresh towels, when the scream came again. Closer now. Roar enough to strip paint. She moved toward it without thinking. Around her, other staff members fled the opposite direction, their faces set in practiced ignorance. Whatever was happening in Valentina Romano's room was not their problem. Could not be their problem. Not if they wanted to keep working, keep breathing. But Maya's feet carried her forward anyway, drawn by instinct older than caution, stronger than fear. The door was wide open. Inside, Valentina's room looked like a tornado had touched down. Books swept from shelves, a lamp overturned, paint spilled across expensive carpet in violent streaks of red and black. And in the center, the 10-year-old girl sat in her wheelchair, hands covering her face, sobbing with a kind of desperation that comes from having no hope left. At the door stood a woman in a crisp blazer, her professional mask cracking. The latest therapist, already defeated. I'm sorry, Mr. Romano, but I can't help her if she won't. Then leave. Dario Romano's voice came from the shadows, cold as a blade. He stepped into view, and even the air seemed to recoil from him. Dark suit, darker eyes, face carved from the same stone they used for gravestones. You're the 7th one. Clearly, you're all useless. The therapist fled. And in the sudden silence, Maya heard herself speak. May I try? 3 words. Soft but clear. Suicidal in their audacity. Dario's head turned slowly toward her, and Maya felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. This was the man who ordered executions over dinner. This was the monster parents invoked to scare children into obedience. And she had just volunteered to do what 7 professionals couldn't. You. His voice carried disbelief sharp enough to cut. You're a maid. Yes. Maya kept her voice steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. But I grew up with trauma. I know what it looks like when someone's drowning on dry land. For a long moment, Dario studied her with eyes that had seen through better liars. Then he stepped aside, a gesture that felt like a test and a threat wrapped together. 5 minutes, he said. Hurt her, and you won't leave this house. Maya understood the promise beneath the words. She set down the towels and entered the wreckage of Valentina's room. Behind her, she felt Dario's presence in the doorway, watching, waiting for her to fail like all the others. She didn't approach Valentina directly. Instead, Maya knelt beside the spilled paint, picked up a brush, and began painting on the carpet, simple strokes, meaningless shapes, but steady and purposeful. She painted in silence while Valentina's sobs gradually quieted to hiccups, then to shuddering breaths. After 2 minutes, a small voice spoke. You're wasting it. The paint. Valentina's words were thick with tears but clearer than anyone had heard in months. Maybe, Maya said softly, not looking up. Or maybe I'm making something new from something broken. Either way, it's just paint. The waste would be not using it at all. She set down the brush and finally met Valentina's eyes. The girl's face was streaked with tears and fury and exhaustion so deep it belonged on someone 10 times her age. My mom's gone, Valentina whispered, and the words cracked on exit. I know, Maya said. Mine too. And my dad. And my brother. Gone is the worst place, isn't it? Because you can't visit there. Something shifted in Valentina's expression, recognition, maybe, or relief at finding someone who spoke her language. The girl's hand, which had been clenched into a fist, slowly opened. Do you paint them? The people who are gone. Sometimes, Maya admitted. Not perfectly. But painting them wrong is better than forgetting them completely. For the first time since the accident that stole her mother and her legs, Valentina Romano reached out. Not for a therapist's hand, not for a nurse's comfort, but for the paintbrush Maya had set down. Can you show me? She asked. Behind them in the doorway, Dario Romano watched his daughter pick up a brush and press it to paper. Watched this nobody maid guide her hand with steady confidence. Watched as Valentina painted a crooked circle in yellow and whispered, "The sun." Mom liked the sun. And Dario felt something dangerous bloom in his chest, not gratitude, which could be controlled, but need. This woman had reached his daughter in 5 minutes. This invisible maid had accomplished what money and power couldn't buy. Which meant she was either a miracle or a weapon. And in Dario Romano's world, miracles didn't exist. They were always traps waiting to spring, debts waiting to be collected, angles waiting to cut. So he would discover the truth about Maya Rivers. He would learn what she wanted, what she hid, why she was really here. And when he uncovered the secret she carried, that her brother drove the truck that killed his wife, that her family's name was written in his daughter's blood, he would decide whether mercy was possible, or if vengeance was the only language his world understood. Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. The Romano estate existed in 2 realities. To the outside world, it was a historical landmark, a restored Victorian mansion in Staten Island, surrounded by manicured gardens and wrought iron gates, belonging to a reclusive businessman who donated generously to local charities and kept his affairs private. To those inside, it was something else entirely. A fortress. A court. A place where territories were divided and problems were disappeared, where loyalty was rewarded and betrayal was punished in ways that left no evidence except whispered warnings. Dario Romano ruled this kingdom from a study lined with first-edition books he never read and art collected more for value than beauty. At 38, he'd inherited the Romano operations from his father and expanded them with ruthless efficiency, racketeering, loan sharking, strategic violence that kept competitors nervous and allies grateful. He was feared across 5 boroughs, respected by men who understood power's true currency. But for 7 months, none of that mattered. Since Sophia died, since the crash that crushed their car and Valentina's future, Dario's empire felt hollow. He still gave orders, still enforced discipline, still met with copos and soldiers who needed direction. But his mind stayed trapped in that hospital room where doctors told him his wife was gone and his daughter would never walk again. Valentina had been the light in his carefully controlled darkness. Her laughter, her innocent questions about why Daddy's friends were always so serious, her drawings that she taped to his office walls without permission, she'd made the monster feel almost human. The accident stole that. In its place was a child who screamed at kindness, who threw things when people tried to help, who'd locked herself behind walls so thick that specialists called her unreachable. Until today. Until a maid who shouldn't have mattered walked into his daughter's room and came out with paint on her hands and hope on her face. Dario pulled up Maya Rivers's file again, this time looking deeper. 3 months in his employ. Hired through a standard agency after background checks came back clean. No criminal record, no suspicious associations, references checked out. 26 years old, worked 2 previous households in Manhattan. Both positions ended amicably. But now Dario noticed gaps. No family listed, not unusual, but notable. Previous address in Newark, but employment history showed Manhattan positions. Somebody was supporting her during employment gaps, or she had savings she shouldn't. And the timing of her hire, coming just 4 months after the accident, felt suddenly less coincidental. His instincts, honed by decades of surviving in a world where trust was lethal, whispered warnings he couldn't quite articulate. This woman had broken protocol by approaching Valentina. This woman had succeeded where experts failed. This woman had appeared in his household just when his daughter needed someone most. Convenient miracles were always traps. Dario made a call to his most trusted lieutenant. I need everything on Maya Rivers. Not just the background check, everything. Where she goes, who she calls, what she does when she thinks no one's watching. I want to know who she was before she knocked on my door. Because in Dario Romano's world, everyone had a past. Everyone had secrets. And the woman who just saved his daughter was about to have hers dragged into the light, where he could decide if she was an angel or an enemy wearing an angel's face. Morning light filtered through Valentina's windows like an interrogation, exposing every crack in the carefully maintained facade of normalcy. The room had been cleaned overnight, the spilled paint scrubbed from carpet, broken objects replaced, disorder erased as if yesterday's chaos had never existed. But the yellow sun Valentina had painted remained, taped to the wall beside her bed where she could see it first thing upon waking. Maya stood outside the door at 7:30, holding a sketchbook and a tin of crayons she'd purchased from her own meager salary. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear of Valentina, but from the weight of what she'd set in motion. She'd broken protocol. She'd drawn Dario Romano's attention. And worse, she'd let herself care about a child whose tragedy was written in her family's blood. She knocked softly. No answer. She knocked again. Go away. Valentina's voice came sharp and small from inside. Maya opened the door anyway. The girl sat in her wheelchair by the window, still wearing yesterday's paint-stained shirt, her hair uncombed. She turned at the intrusion, her face already set in that defensive snarl Maya recognized from the mirror, the expression of someone expecting hurt and deciding to strike first. I said go away. I don't want another stupid doctor telling me to talk about my feelings. Good, Maya said, setting the sketchbook on the floor and sitting cross-legged beside it. Because I'm not a doctor, and I don't particularly care about your feelings right now. Valentina blinked, thrown off balance by the bluntness. Then what do you want? To draw. Maya opened the tin of crayons with a soft click, selected a forest green, and began sketching on the blank page. Simple lines. A tree trunk, branches reaching upward. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive. Just steady, purposeful strokes. For 3 minutes, Valentina said nothing. She watched with that wary intensity of someone waiting for the trap to spring, for the kindness to curdle into demands. But Maya simply drew, adding leaves in different shades of green, then a bird perched on a branch, not the carved wooden one from yesterday, but something alive and moving. You're not very good, Valentina finally said. Maya glanced up with a slight smile. Neither are you. Want to be not very good together. The girl's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Her eyes moved to the crayons scattered between them, a rainbow of possibilities that hadn't existed in her world for months. Her hand, which had clutched her wheelchair's armrest with white-knuckled tension, slowly loosened. What are you drawing? A place my brother used to take me, Maya said quietly. There was a park in Newark with this massive oak tree. We'd sit underneath it when things got bad at home, and he'd tell me stories about the birds. Said they knew all the neighborhood secrets because they could see everything from up high. Valentina wheeled closer, just slightly. Where's your brother now? The question landed like a fist, but Maya kept her hand steady on the page. Gone. Like your mom. Do you think, Valentina's voice dropped to barely a whisper, do you think they can see us? From wherever gone is. Maya set down the crayon and met Valentina's eyes, those ancient eyes trapped in a child's face. I don't know. But I draw the tree anyway, just in case. So if he's watching, he'll know I remembered. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the mansion's ventilation system and the soft morning songs of birds outside that Valentina couldn't run toward anymore. Then the girl's hand moved, trembling but determined, and picked up a crayon from the tin. Burnt orange. Her mother's favorite color. The same one she'd used yesterday. "Can I draw on your page?" Valentina asked, so quietly Maya almost missed it. "It's not my page," Maya said. "It's our page. Draw wherever you want." The crayon touched paper. A single line appeared, shaky and uncertain, cutting across Maya's tree. Then another line and another, until the shape of something began to emerge, a figure, stick-thin and simple, standing beneath the branches. "That's me," Valentina whispered. "Before." Maya's throat tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "Before still exists. It's just wearing different clothes now." Valentina drew another figure, this one in the wheelchair. The lines were harder, pressed deeper into the paper. "This is me after." "They're not the same person." "No," Maya agreed. "They're not. After is usually stronger. She has to be." The girl's hand paused mid-stroke. "You think I'm strong?" "I think you survived something that would break most adults," Maya said simply. "That's the definition of strong, even when it doesn't feel like it." Outside the room, unseen by either of them, Dario Romano stood in the hallway. He'd been there for 10 minutes, watching through the door that Maya had left slightly ajar. His head of security, Marcus, stood beside him, uncomfortable with the silence. "Boss, you want me to run deeper checks on the maid?" Marcus kept his voice low. "Already ordered them." Dario's eyes never left the scene inside, his daughter drawing for the first time in 7 months, her face less like a death mask and more like a child's. "I want to know everything. Where she lived before Newark, who paid for her education, whether she has connections to any of our rivals. Everything." "You think she's a plant?" "I think miracles don't exist in our world," Dario said quietly. "Which means she's either exactly what she appears to be, impossibly lucky, or she's something more dangerous." Inside the room, Valentina had added more figures to the drawing. A tall woman with Sophia's long hair. A man whose features Valentina couldn't quite remember anymore, drawn more as impression than accuracy. "My family," Valentina said, then paused. "Before." Maya added her own figures on the other side of the tree, 3 stick people, simple and small. "Mine too. Before is crowded, isn't it? Sometimes it feels like there's more people in before than in now. Does it get less crowded?" The desperate hope in Valentina's voice could have shattered glass. Maya considered lying, offering false comfort, but something about this child demanded truth. "No. But you get stronger at carrying them. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you find people in now who make the weight a little lighter." Valentina looked up from the drawing, studying Maya's face with that unnerving intensity children possess when they're searching for lies. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her, because she picked up another crayon, blue this time, and drew a new figure between the before families. "That's you," Valentina said. "In the middle. Because you have a before too." The simple statement, the casual inclusion, hit Maya harder than she'd expected. She blinked against the sudden burning in her eyes and nodded. "Yeah, I have a before too." Down the hall, staff members moved through their morning routines, but news traveled fast in the Romano household. The usual whispers about territory disputes and business dealings had been replaced by something else. "Did you hear? The boss's daughter is drawing again." "With who? Not another therapist already?" "No. The new maid. Maya something. Apparently she's the only one the girl doesn't throw things at." "The quiet one? The one who never talks to anyone?" "That's the one. Been in there an hour already. No screaming, no broken furniture. It's like she cast a spell or something." In the kitchen, Lucia, the head cook who'd worked for the Romanos for 15 years, crossed herself and muttered a prayer. That child needed someone. Maybe the saints finally listened. But in his study, Dario Romano wasn't thinking about saints. He was thinking about angles, about leverage, about the fact that this maid, this nobody who'd appeared in his household 4 months after his wife's death, had accomplished in 24 hours what an army of specialists couldn't do in 7 months. On his desk lay the preliminary report from Marcus. Basic information, nothing alarming yet. But there were gaps in Maya Rivers's history that bothered him. A 3-year period in her early 20s with no clear employment, references that checked out but felt rehearsed, an absence of digital footprint that seemed almost intentional for someone her age. And then there was the timing. Always the timing. Dario closed the file and returned to the hallway, to his position outside his daughter's door. Inside, Valentina was laughing, a sound so foreign it took him a moment to recognize it. She'd drawn a bird wearing a tiny crown, and Maya was adding a speech bubble, "I'm the king of this tree, and I decree that Wednesdays are for ice cream." "That's silly," Valentina giggled. "Birds can't talk." "These birds can," Maya said solemnly. "They're magic birds. They know all the neighborhood secrets, remember?" And Dario Romano watched his daughter smile, actually smile, and felt the dangerous bloom of hope war with the cold calculation of suspicion. This woman was either saving his daughter or playing a game so sophisticated he hadn't detected it yet. Either way, he would know the truth. And when he discovered that Maya Rivers's brother was Lucas Rivers, the man blamed for killing Sophia and crippling Valentina, he would decide whether mercy existed in his world, or if some betrayals were too fundamental to forgive. For now, though, he let his daughter draw. He let the miracle continue, even as he sharpened the knife that might end it. Because in Dario Romano's world, trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. Even when it wore a gentle face and held a crayon in steady hands. Dario Romano's world operated on a simple principle: power was maintained through fear, and fear was maintained through reputation. At 2 in the afternoon, while Maya helped Valentina practice holding a paintbrush with her weaker left hand, Dario sat in a warehouse in Red Hook watching a man named Vincent Calabrese realize he'd made a fatal miscalculation. "I swear, Mr. Romano, I didn't know the shipment was short. Someone must have skimmed before it reached me." "Someone." Dario's voice remained conversational, almost pleasant, which made it worse. He sat in a metal folding chair like it was a throne, his suit immaculate despite the warehouse's dust and grime. Behind him, 3 of his men stood silent as statues. "You're telling me someone stole from me, and you, my distributor for the entire Brooklyn waterfront, somehow didn't notice?" Vincent's face had gone the color of spoiled milk. "I can make it right. Give me 2 weeks, I'll find who." "Marcus." Dario's head of security stepped forward and placed a folder on the overturned crate serving as a table. Dario opened it with the casual care of someone reviewing a restaurant menu. 17 shipments over 6 months, Dario read aloud. Each one short by approximately 8%. That's not skimming, Vincent. That's a business model. He looked up, his dark eyes flat as a shark's. "Did you think I wouldn't notice? Or did you think I'd gotten soft since my wife died?" "No, Mr. Romano, I would never." "You did." Dario closed the folder. "The question is whether you were stupid or bold. I haven't decided which is worse." The warehouse fell silent except for Vincent's ragged breathing. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious. Inside, a man's fate hung on the thread of Dario Romano's patience. "Your family," Dario said finally. "Wife, 2 kids. They live in Bensonhurst, right? Nice neighborhood. Good schools." Vincent's legs nearly gave out. "Please. Please, they didn't know anything." "I'm aware." Dario stood, buttoning his suit jacket with precise movements. "Which is why they'll be fine. You, however, are done in this business. Marcus will escort you home. You'll pack 1 bag, Say nothing to your family except that you got a job opportunity in Florida, and you'll be on a plane by midnight. If I ever see you in New York again, we'll have a different conversation. Are we clear?" The mercy was so unexpected that Vincent nearly collapsed with relief. "Yes. Yes, Mr. Romano. Thank you. Don't thank me." Dario's voice could have frozen blood. "Thank my daughter. She's having a good week, which means I'm in a generous mood. 6 months ago, you'd be in the Hudson. Now get out of my sight." As Vincent was led away, one of Dario's capos approached. "Boss, that was soft. Everyone's gonna hear about it." "Good," Dario said quietly. "Let them hear that Dario Romano shows mercy when earned, but never mistakes." Vincent will spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, wondering if today's the day I change my mind. That's more effective than a bullet. But as he walked to his car, Dario's thoughts weren't on Vincent Calabrese or business strategy. They were on the maid who'd somehow become essential to his daughter's recovery, and the growing suspicion that kindness this effective always had a price. By evening, Dario returned to the mansion to find it transformed. Not physically, the marble still gleamed, the chandeliers still cast their cold light, but the atmosphere had shifted. Staff members moved with less tension, their shoulders not quite so hunched. And from the second floor came a sound he'd almost forgotten existed, his daughter's laughter. He took the stairs 2 at a time. Outside Valentina's room, he found Lucia standing guard like a protective grandmother. The old cook smiled when she saw him. "She ate lunch today, Mr. Romano. All of it. First time in weeks she didn't throw her plate." "The maid. Still with her?" "They've been painting all afternoon. I brought them tea an hour ago, and your daughter said thank you. Looked me right in the eye and said it." Lucia's eyes were damp. "It's like having the old Valentina back." Dario nodded, his expression unreadable, and gently pushed open the door. The scene inside could have been from a different life. Valentina sat at her adaptive desk, face scrunched in concentration as she painted careful strokes on paper. Maya sat beside her, not hovering or correcting, just present. Quiet. Between them lay a half-dozen completed paintings, messy, childish, beautiful in their imperfection. "That's really good, Valentina," Maya was saying. "The way you blended the blue and green there, that's advanced technique." "My hand keeps shaking." Frustration crept into Valentina's voice. "Hands shake. That's what they do. But look," Maya pointed to a particularly wavy line. "That shake made the water look like it's actually moving. Sometimes mistakes are just style wearing a disguise." Valentina considered this, then smiled slightly. "You're weird." "Probably," Maya agreed. "But weird people make more interesting art." "Girls." Dario's voice cut through the moment like a blade through silk. Both turned. Valentina's smile faltered for just a second before she rallied. "Papa. Look what I made." "It's beautiful, Piccola." Dario's voice softened for his daughter in ways it never did for anyone else. "But it's time for your rest. Maya, a word in my office." "It wasn't a request." Maya's face remained calm, but Dario noticed the way her hands stilled on the paint palette, the barely perceptible catch in her breath. "Good. She should be nervous. Everyone who entered his office should be." "I'll come back tomorrow," Maya told Valentina gently. "And we'll work on that tree you wanted to paint, okay?" "Promise." Valentina's voice carried a desperation that made Dario's chest tighten. "Promise." Maya squeezed the girl's hand, then stood and followed Dario into the hallway. They walked in silence through corridors lined with art worth more than most houses, past rooms where armed men played cards and discussed territory disputes in low voices. The mansion's beauty couldn't quite disguise what it was: a fortress, a court, a place where mercy was currency and violence was common language. Dario's office sat at the heart of it all, a room of dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with first editions he'd inherited but never read, a desk that had witnessed confessions and condemnations for 3 generations. Behind it, windows overlooked the grounds, offering a view of the gardens Valentina could no longer walk through. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Maya sat, her posture straight but not rigid, hands folded in her lap. She looked small in the oversized leather chair, but her gaze remained steady when it met his. Dario didn't sit. He stood behind his desk, hands in his pockets, studying her the way a jeweler studies a stone, looking for the flaws, the fractures, the places where pressure would crack the facade. 7 child psychologists, he said finally. 2 psychiatrists. 3 occupational therapists specializing in trauma. I brought in a specialist from Johns Hopkins who'd worked with victims of the Boston Marathon bombing. You know what they all had in common. Maya waited, silent. They all failed. Dario's voice remained conversational, but edged with something dark. Every single one. Some lasted weeks, some barely made it through a session. And then you, a maid with no credentials, no training, no background in child psychology, walk in with crayons and accomplish in 3 days what they couldn't do in 7 months. Mr. Romano. I'm not finished. He moved around the desk, leaning against it, closer now. This makes me curious, Maya. It makes me wonder what I'm missing. Because in my experience, when something seems too good to be true, it's because someone's playing a game I haven't figured out yet. I'm not playing a game. Everyone plays games. Dario crossed his arms. The question is what you want. Money? Most people want money. Security? A better position in the household? Or maybe something else entirely? Maya held his gaze, and for a moment Dario saw something flash in her eyes, not fear which he expected, but something closer to pain. I don't want anything from you, Mr. Romano. Then explain it to me. He leaned forward slightly. All those professionals with their degrees and experience, why did they fail when you succeeded? The silence stretched between them, taut as wire. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the office in shades of amber and shadow. Maya's hands tightened slightly in her lap, then released. Because they treated her like she was broken, she said quietly. Like she was a problem to be solved, a diagnosis to be managed. They came in with clipboards and strategies and therapeutic approaches, all of which told Valentina the same thing: you're not okay, and we're here to fix you. And you don't think she's broken? I think she's hurt. Maya's voice carried conviction now, stronger. There's a difference. Broken means unsalvageable, means the pieces don't fit anymore. Hurt means wounded but whole, means given time and safety, healing happens on its own. Dario studied her face, the earnestness there, the absence of calculation he'd learned to spot in everyone else. It unnerved him more than dishonesty would have. You speak like someone who knows, he said. I do. Tell me. It was a command, not a request. Maya hesitated, and Dario saw her weighing options, deciding how much truth to offer. He'd seen this calculation 1,000 times in business meetings, in confessions, in the moment before someone decided whether to lie or leap. I lost people, Maya said finally. My family. Not all at once like Valentina, but piece by piece until there was almost nothing left. And every person who tried to help treated me like I was damaged goods, pitted me, tiptoed around me, spoke in soft voices like I might shatter. It made the grief worse because I had to manage their discomfort on top of my own. So you decided to do differently. I decided to treat her like she's exactly what she is, a 10-year-old girl who survived something impossible and is trying to figure out how to keep surviving. Not broken. Not a project. Just hurt and doing her best. The answer was too simple, too honest. Dario had built an empire on reading people, on detecting lies and motives hidden behind pleasant masks. But Maya Rivers sat in his office speaking truth that felt naked in its vulnerability, and he couldn't find the angle. which meant he wasn't looking hard enough. "I'm watching you," he said quietly. "Every moment you spend with my daughter, every word you say to her, every move you make in this house. If I discover you have ulterior motives, if you're playing some game I haven't detected, the consequences will be severe. Do you understand?" "Yes." No hesitation, no pleading. "Good." Dario straightened. "You can go." Maya stood, moved toward the door, then paused. "Mr. Romano?" "What?" She turned back, and in the dying light her face carried a sadness that seemed too deep for someone her age. "Valentina asked me today if you blame her for the accident. For her mother dying while she survived." The words hit like a physical blow. Dario's hands clenched at his sides. "What did you tell her?" "I told her I didn't know. That she should ask you herself." Maya's voice softened. "But I think she's afraid of the answer. Just thought you should know." Then she was gone, leaving Dario alone in his office with a question that carved through his chest like a blade. Did he blame Valentina? For surviving when Sophia didn't? For being the reason Sophia was in the car that night, heading to a recital that Valentina had begged to attend? The answer was no. Of course it was no. But he'd never told her that. In 7 months of grief and rage and helplessness, he'd never once said the words his daughter needed to hear. Dario sat at his desk and pulled up the security feed showing Valentina's room. His daughter sat in her wheelchair, staring at the paintings she'd made, and even through the grainy camera footage he could see the question in her posture: "Am I forgiven for being alive?" And Maya Rivers, the maid he didn't trust, had seen it when he'd been too consumed by his own pain to notice. He picked up the phone and dialed Marcus. The deep background on Maya Rivers. "I want it finished by tomorrow. Everything, birth certificates, school records, every address she's lived at, every person she's known. I want to know who she was before she became invisible. Because gifts this pure always had poison hidden inside them. And Dario Romano would find it before it destroyed what little family he had left. Even if the truth cut deeper than any betrayal." Maya's hands didn't stop shaking until she reached her quarters on the mansion's 3rd floor, a small room tucked between storage and the service stairwell where staff members weren't supposed to linger. It was barely larger than a closet, furnished with a narrow bed, a dresser with a cracked mirror, and a window that overlooked the delivery entrance. She'd chosen it specifically for its isolation, its insignificance. She locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed, pressing her palms against her knees to still the tremors. Dario Romano's words echoed in her mind: "I'm watching you. Every moment. Every word." He would find out. Eventually, he would discover the truth she'd buried beneath fake references and a carefully constructed past. And when he did, the man who'd shown mercy to Vincent Calabrese because his daughter was having a good week would show her none at all. Because Maya Rivers wasn't just a maid who'd happened to connect with his traumatized child. She was the sister of the man who'd killed his wife. 7 months earlier. Newark. 11:47 p.m. Maya had been washing dishes in the tiny apartment she shared with Lucas, her hands raw from the double shift at the diner, when her phone rang. The number was her brother's, but the voice on the other end belonged to a stranger, panicked, broken, barely recognizable. "Maya. Oh God, Maya." "Lucas." She'd nearly dropped the plate she was holding. "What's wrong? Where are you?" I can't." His breath came in ragged gasps, the sound of someone drowning on dry land. "They cut my brakes." "The brake lines, they cut them, and I told them I couldn't do it, but they said if I didn't drive they'd kill you, they'd find you and they'd." "Slow down." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Who? Who said that?" "I don't know their names." "Men." "They came to the warehouse, showed me pictures of you leaving work, said they knew where you lived, and I had to. Maya, I'm so sorry, I didn't have a choice." "Where are you right now?" She was already grabbing her keys, her coat. "I'm in the truck. They're making me." His voice broke. "There's a car. A nice car. I'm supposed to, they said brake failure, make it look like an accident, but Maya, I can't do this. Then don't. She was running now, down the stairs, into the street. Park the truck. Get out. Run. We'll figure this out together. They have someone following me. If I stop Maya, they'll know where you are. They'll hurt you. I can't let them hurt you. Lucas, listen to me. I love you. His voice steadied, the way it did when he'd made a decision he couldn't unmake. Remember that, okay? Whatever happens, remember I love you, and this wasn't. The sound that came through the phone wasn't quite human. Metal screaming against metal, glass shattering, a sound like the world ending in slow motion. Then Lucas's scream, raw and terrified, and abruptly cut short. Then nothing. Lucas? Lucas. Maya had collapsed on the sidewalk, phone pressed to her ear, screaming her brother's name into static. Strangers stopped, asked if she needed help, called 911 when she couldn't speak. By the time the police arrived, the news was already breaking. A truck had crashed into a luxury sedan on Route 3, driver fled the scene, 2 victims, a woman dead on impact, a child critically injured. They'd found Lucas's truck abandoned 3 blocks from the crash. Blood on the steering wheel, the door hanging open, brake lines severed clean. The official report called it vehicular manslaughter, possibly murder. Driver identified as Lucas Rivers, 28, warehouse worker with a history of financial problems. Suspected DUI. Fled to avoid arrest. No body was ever recovered. Lucas Rivers had simply vanished, leaving behind only questions and a sister who carried the weight of his ghost. And the victims, the woman who died and the child who survived, belonged to Dario Romano, the most dangerous man in the city. Present day. Maya's room. Maya pulled out the shoebox she kept hidden under her bed. Inside lay everything that remained of Lucas, a few photographs, his final paycheck from the warehouse, and a small notebook with torn pages, his handwriting shaky and desperate. They said if I don't drive, they'll kill Maya. She'd shown this to the police. They'd filed it as evidence of premeditation, proof that Lucas knew what he was doing, that he'd chosen to commit murder to save himself financial trouble. They twisted his final words into a confession rather than the plea for help it actually was. No one believed that Lucas Rivers had been a victim too. No one except Maya. She'd spent 3 months after the crash trying to find proof. Investigating the men Lucas mentioned, searching for witnesses, begging the police to look deeper. But Lucas's history worked against him. Minor debts, a DUI from 5 years prior, the appearance of someone who'd made bad choices and paid a worse price. And then she discovered who the victims were. The Romano family. Mafia. Untouchable. The kind of people who made investigators go silent and files disappear. The kind of people who would never believe that their tragedy was orchestrated by someone else, that Lucas was a pawn in a game bigger than his survival. Maya had realized then that she had 2 choices: spend her life trying to clear a dead man's name while Dario Romano's reach ensured she'd never succeed, or find another way to atone for sins that weren't hers but felt like they were. So she'd created a new identity. Changed her appearance, dyed her blonde hair dark brown, started wearing makeup that altered her features subtly. Got fake references from households that wouldn't fact-check too carefully. Learned everything she could about the Romano mansion and its operations. And 4 months after the crash, when she'd heard rumors that Dario Romano's daughter was struggling, that no therapist could reach her, Maya had applied for a position in the household. Not for revenge. Not for some elaborate scheme. But because Valentina Romano, the girl her brother had been forced to hurt, deserved someone who understood that survivors carry guilt for breathing when others don't. Someone who knew what it meant to lose everything and keep going anyway. Someone who could look at her without pity or clinical detachment and see simply a child trying to survive. Maya had never planned to stay invisible. She'd planned to help Valentina heal just enough to ease her own guilt, then disappear before anyone noticed. A ghost fixing the damage another ghost had caused. But Valentina had smiled at her yesterday, had laughed today, had said thank you and I'll see you tomorrow with hope in her voice. And Maya had realized too late that she'd made the fatal mistake of caring, of letting herself believe she could help without consequence, could atone without cost, could stand in the house of the man whose life her family destroyed and somehow make things right. "I'm watching you," Dario had said. Maya pulled out her phone and looked at the background photo, a picture of Lucas from 3 years ago, grinning at the camera, his arm around her shoulders. He'd been happy then, before the warehouse job, before the debt, before men with no names had turned him into a weapon. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the photograph. "I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I couldn't prove what they did to you. And I'm sorry that trying to fix this might be the thing that gets me killed too." But she wouldn't run. Not yet. Because Valentina had asked her today, while they were painting, "Do you think people who hurt others by accident deserve forgiveness?" Maya had answered carefully, "I think intent matters. And I think people who were forced to hurt others while trying to protect someone they love, those people were victims too." Valentina had nodded solemnly. Like in stories, when the hero has to do something bad to save someone good. Exactly like that. The girl had smiled then, and Maya felt the weight of Lucas's ghost settle a little lighter on her shoulders. This was why she'd come. Not to absolve herself, she could never do that, but to make sure that Valentina didn't spend her life believing she was broken, believing she deserved the pain, believing the lie that survivors carry guilt for someone else's crime. Maya returned the shoebox to its hiding place and looked at herself in the cracked mirror. Dark hair. Careful makeup. The uniform that made her invisible to everyone except the one person who mattered. Tomorrow, Dario's investigators would dig deeper. Tomorrow, they might uncover the threads connecting Maya Rivers to Lucas Rivers. Tomorrow, everything might end in the kind of violence that the Romano family was famous for. But tonight, Valentina Romano was sleeping with paintings she'd made hanging on her walls. Tonight, a little girl who'd stopped speaking was finding her voice again. Tonight, the impossible was still possible. And Maya Rivers would stay invisible just a little longer, walking the razor's edge between redemption and ruin, knowing that the truth she carried would either save her or bury her beside her brother. 3 floors below, in his office, Dario Romano received an email from Marcus. The subject line read, "Preliminary findings, Maya Rivers." He opened it, expecting routine information. What he found instead were gaps. Inconsistencies. The beginning of a pattern that made his instincts scream warnings he couldn't yet articulate. Previous address listed as Newark. But employment references show Manhattan positions. No explanation for 3-year gap in employment history. One social media account, created only 8 months ago. No photos, minimal activity, possibly fabricated. And this boss found one Newark police report from 7 months ago. Maya Rivers, age 26, called in a disturbance. Transcript shows she was looking for information about her brother. Brother's name, Lucas Rivers. Dario stopped reading. Lucas Rivers. The name detonated in his mind like a grenade. Lucas Rivers, the man who'd crashed his truck into Sophia's car. The man who'd killed his wife and crippled his daughter. The man whose body was never found, whose cowardice was so complete he'd fled the scene and never looked back. Lucas Rivers had a sister. And that sister was currently upstairs, painting with Valentina, earning his daughter's trust, sleeping under his roof. Dario's hand moved to his desk drawer where he kept his gun. His vision narrowed to a single point of rage, so pure it felt like clarity. Then his phone buzzed. A text from Valentina, sent through the tablet they'd given her for communication. "Papa, Maya promised we'd paint the garden tomorrow. Can we? Please?" His daughter. Smiling. Hoping. Healing. Because of the sister of the man who destroyed their family. Dario Romano sat in his office surrounded by evidence of betrayal, his hand on his gun, his daughter's text glowing on his phone screen, and felt the ground shift beneath everything he thought he knew. The impossible had just become unforgivable. And tomorrow, the reckoning would begin. Dario didn't sleep that night. He sat in his office until dawn, the gun on his desk, Marcus's report glowing on his laptop screen, and the sound of his daughter's laughter echoing in his memory like an accusation. Lucas Rivers had a sister. That sister earned Valentina's trust. That sister slept under his roof, ate his food, touched his daughter with hands that shared blood with a murderer. By the time morning light filtered through the windows, Dario had made his decision. He would give Maya Rivers one chance to explain, not because he believed explanations mattered, but because even condemned prisoners deserved to know why they were dying. He watched the security feeds as Maya entered Valentina's room at 8 a.m., carrying the sketchbook and that damned tin of crayons. Watched as his daughter's face lit up with genuine joy. Watched as Maya helped Valentina with her morning routine with a gentleness that looked so authentic it made his rage burn hotter. Because if it was all performance, if every kind word and soft smile was calculated manipulation, then Maya Rivers was more dangerous than any rival he'd ever faced. She'd weaponized his daughter's trauma and his own desperation, and that kind of betrayal demanded a response that went beyond bullets. At 6 p.m., after Valentina had eaten dinner and been settled for the evening by the night nurse, Dario sent the message, "My office. Now." Maya knew before she reached the door. Something in the air had changed. The staff avoided her eyes, Lucia crossed herself when Maya passed, and the guards who normally nodded politely now watched her with a flat stare of men waiting for orders to act. "He knows." Her hands were steady as she knocked. Her voice didn't shake when Dario called, "Enter." But inside, beneath the careful calm she'd learned to wear like armor, Maya felt the final threads of hope snap one by one. The office looked different at night. Darker. The city lights beyond the windows cast shadows that turned Dario's face into something carved from stone. He stood behind his desk, perfectly still, and the rage radiating from him was so tangible Maya could taste it, metallic and bitter, like blood. "Close the door," he said quietly. She did. "Sit." Maya sat in the same chair she'd occupied 2 days ago, when Dario had questioned her success with Valentina. A lifetime ago. She folded her hands in her lap and waited for the executioner to speak. Dario picked up a photograph from his desk and placed it in front of her. A driver's license photo. Young man, dark hair, tired eyes, slight smile. Her brother, frozen in a moment before everything ended. "Do you know the name Lucas Rivers?" Dario's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. The same tone he'd used with Vincent Calabrese before offering mercy that felt like threat. Maya looked at the photograph, at Lucas's face, and felt tears burn behind her eyes. She didn't let them fall. "Yes," she said quietly. "That was my brother." The admission hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. For 3 hot beats, Dario said nothing. Then his hand moved with controlled precision, sweeping the photograph off the desk. It fluttered to the floor between them. "Your brother." Each word came out precise as a scalpel cut. "Lucas Rivers. The man who drove a truck with severed brake lines into my wife's car. The man who killed Sophia and crippled my daughter. The man who fled the scene like a coward and was never found." Dario leaned forward, his knuckles white against the desk. "That Lucas Rivers was your brother?" "Yes." "And you came into my house. You touched my daughter. You earned her trust, made her laugh, made her hope." His voice cracked, fury breaking through the careful control. "You did all of this knowing that your family destroyed mine?" "I came here because," Maya's voice caught. She forced it steady. "Because Valentina deserved someone who understood." Understood. Dario moved around the desk with the predatory grace of something built for violence. "You think you understand? You think losing your criminal brother, who chose to commit murder, is the same as what he took from us?" "He didn't choose." "Don't." The single word came out lethal. "Don't you dare defend him to me. I read the police reports. I saw the evidence. Severed brake lines, premeditation. He knew exactly what he was doing when he aimed that truck at my wife's car. Maya stood, her legs shaking but her voice finding strength from some deep well she didn't know existed. You're right. You read the reports. Did you read the part about the phone call? The part where he called me minutes before the crash, terrified, saying someone threatened to kill me if he didn't drive. A convenient excuse from a dead coward. He wasn't a coward. The words tore out of her. He was scared. He was forced. And when I tried to tell the police, tried to show them his notebook, tried to explain that someone set him up, no one would listen because the victims were yours. Because investigating the Romano family's tragedy too closely might uncover things the police didn't want to find. Dario's hand shot out, gripping her throat, not squeezing, not yet, but the threat implicit in his fingers. Careful, Maya. You're suggesting I had something to do with my own wife's death. No. Maya met his eyes, tears finally spilling over. I'm suggesting your enemies did. That they used my brother as a weapon, threatened to kill me to make him cooperate, and then erased him so thoroughly that no one would ever know the truth. Lucas was a victim too. And so was I. Victim. Dario's laugh was broken glass. You infiltrated my home. You manipulated my daughter. I didn't manipulate her. I helped her because she's a child in pain and I know what that feels like. Maya's voice cracked. Because every time I look at her, I see the damage my family's name caused, even if we didn't choose it. Because I thought, she choked on the words. I thought maybe if I could help her heal, it would mean something. That Lucas's death wouldn't be completely meaningless. That I could do one good thing to balance the scales. There is no balance. Dario released her throat and stepped back, his hand moving to his waistband where Maya knew he kept his gun. There is only debt. And your family's debt is written in my wife's blood and my daughter's broken spine. He pulled the gun. Maya didn't run. She stood perfectly still, watching the man she'd almost begun to respect transform into exactly what everyone said he was, a monster who solved problems with bullets. Marcus. Dario's voice carried through the door. The head of security entered with 2 guards. They'd been waiting. Of course they'd been waiting. Take her outside, Dario said, his gun still pointed at Maya's chest. The East Garden, where the cameras don't reach. Make it clean. No body to find. The guards grabbed Maya's arms. She didn't struggle. What would be the point? This was always how it would end. The moment Dario discovered the truth, her life was forfeit. She'd known that when she first applied to work here. At least Valentina had smiled. At least for a few days, that little girl had remembered what hope felt like. As the guards pulled her toward the door, Maya spoke one last time. Tell Valentina I'm sorry. Tell her none of this was her fault, and that she's strong enough to survive even this. Tell her. I'll tell her nothing, Dario said coldly. She'll forget you existed. Children are resilient that way. The guards dragged Maya into the hallway, their grips bruising her arms. Staff members had vanished, the corridor was empty, doors closed, everyone making themselves conveniently absent. In the Romano household, you didn't witness executions unless ordered to. They descended the main staircase, heading toward the east wing where deliveries arrived and bodies could be removed discreetly. Maya's mind felt strangely calm, distant, as if she was watching this happen to someone else. She thought of Lucas. Of the phone call. Of how his last words had been I love you. At least they'd be together now. At least. Stop. The scream came from above, raw, desperate, earth-shattering in its intensity. All 3 men froze. Don't hurt her. Please. Please don't hurt Maya. Maya's head snapped up. At the top of the staircase, Valentina Romano sat in her wheelchair, tears streaming down her face, her small hands gripping the railing. Behind her stood Lucia, the cook's face pale with horror. Valentina, Dario appeared in his office doorway, the gun still in his hand. Go back to your room. This doesn't concern you. No. Valentina wheeled herself forward with frantic energy. Don't hurt her. Papa, please, she didn't do anything wrong. She's my friend, she's the only one who, her voice broke into sobs. Please don't take her away like Mama. Please. I'll be good. I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't hurt Maya. The words, so many words from a child who'd barely spoken in months, hit like physical blows. Dario stood motionless, his daughter's desperate pleas echoing through the mansion's cold halls. Valentina, you don't understand. I understand she made me want to paint again. Valentina screamed. I understand she doesn't treat me like I'm broken. I understand she's the only person who makes me feel like I'm still me. She wheeled closer, her face red and tear-streaked and so achingly young. If you kill her, Papa, you'll kill the part of me that was just starting to live again. Silence fell like a hammer. The guards held Maya motionless. Lucia crossed herself and whispered prayers. And Dario Romano stood at the top of the stairs, his gun in one hand, his daughter's desperate hope in the other, forced to choose between vengeance and the only thing he had left to lose. Slowly, with a control that looked like it cost him everything, Dario lowered the gun. Bring her back to my office, he said quietly. And Valentina, go with Lucia. I need to speak with Maya alone. You'll hurt her. I won't. The words came out strangled. You have my word. I need to talk to her. Valentina looked at Maya with those ancient eyes, seeking confirmation. Maya nodded, trying to smile despite the tears. It's okay. Your father just wants to talk. I'll be fine. It was possibly a lie. Probably a lie. But Valentina needed to believe it, so Maya made herself sound certain. The girl let Lucia wheel her away, looking back over her shoulder until she disappeared around the corner. Only then did the guards release Maya's arms and escort her back up the stairs, back into the office where her execution had been ordered. Dario closed the door behind them and dismissed the guards with a gesture. Alone again, he stood across from Maya, his gun back in its holster, his face carrying the exhaustion of someone who'd just run a marathon through hell. Talk, he said finally. You have one chance to tell me everything. And it better be the truth, because if I find out you lied, daughter's pleas or not, I'll finish what I started. Maya took a shaking breath and began to speak. To tell him about Lucas's final phone call, about the men who'd threatened her life, about 7 months of trying to prove her brother was innocent while the world called him a murderer. She told Dario Romano everything, knowing that the truth might save her or damn her, but at least it would be spoken aloud before the end. And Dario listened, his jaw clenched, his hands fisted at his sides, as the woman he'd almost killed explained that they'd both been victims of the same crime, casualties in a war neither of them had known they were fighting. Maya's voice was hoarse by the time she finished. She'd told Dario everything, the phone call, Lucas's panic, the severed brake lines, the police reports that twisted evidence into condemnation. She'd laid bare 7 months of grief and guilt, of carrying her brother's ghost while trying to save the daughter he'd been forced to hurt. Dario had listened in silence, his face unreadable as stone. Now he stood at the window, hands in his pockets, staring at the city lights as if searching for answers in their cold glow. You expect me to believe, he said finally, voice carefully controlled, that my enemies orchestrated my wife's death using a random warehouse worker they'd never met before? Not random. Maya's throat ached. Lucas worked at Castellano Imports, the warehouse on the docks. Dario's shoulders stiffened imperceptibly. Castellano. You know it. I know every operation in my territory. He turned from the window, his dark eyes sharp with something that looked like recognition. Castellano Imports is a front. The owner, Vincent Castellano, pays tribute to the Moretti family. Has for 15 years. Maya's breath caught. Moretti. My rivals. My enemies. Dario moved to his desk, his mind visibly working through implications. They've been trying to weaken my position for years, cutting into my territory, turning my allies, looking for vulnerabilities to exploit. His jaw clenched. And they found one. My wife. My daughter. He pulled up files on his computer, fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. The night of the crash, Sophia was taking Valentina to a dance recital. I was supposed to go, but a meeting ran late. A meeting that, he stopped, his face darkening. A meeting that was moved at the last minute. By someone claiming to represent one of my suppliers. A supplier who later denied ever requesting the meeting. They kept you away deliberately, Maya whispered. So Sophia would be alone in the car. And they needed a weapon. Dario looked at her with an intensity that felt like being dissected. Someone expendable. Someone whose death or disappearance wouldn't raise questions. A warehouse worker with debts and a DUI on record, the perfect patsy. Lucas wasn't perfect. Maya's voice broke. He'd made mistakes, had problems. But he wasn't a killer. When he called me that night, he was terrified. He said they showed him pictures of me, knew where I worked, where I lived. He said if he didn't do what they ordered, she couldn't finish. Dario was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you have proof? Anything concrete beyond your brother's word? Maya reached into her pocket slowly, aware of how the gesture might look threatening. May I? He nodded, hand hovering near his gun. She pulled out the small worn notebook, the only piece of evidence the police had returned after closing the case. Its pages were torn, water-damaged, some of the writing barely legible. She opened it to the last entry and placed it on Dario's desk. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. They said if I don't drive, they'll kill Maya. Showed me photos. Her leaving the diner. Walking home. They know where she lives. What am I supposed to do? I can't let them hurt her. She's all I have left. God forgive me. Maya, if you're reading this, I'm so sorry. This wasn't supposed to. The entry ended mid-sentence, ink smeared as if Lucas had been interrupted or had dropped the pen in panic. Dario read it once. Twice. His finger traced the words with a gentleness that seemed at odds with the violence he'd nearly committed an hour ago. The police saw this, he asked quietly. They said it proved premeditation. That Lucas knew what he was doing, wrote it down to manipulate me if he got caught. Maya's laugh was bitter. They said a real victim would have called the police, not driven the truck. They said my brother chose murder over doing the right thing. And you said? I said he chose me over strangers. That he was 28 years old, terrified, and made the wrong choice trying to save the only family he had left. Tears burned her eyes again. I said he was a victim too. They said I was delusional. Dario closed the notebook carefully, reverently, as if it were something sacred rather than evidence of tragedy. When he looked up, his expression had shifted, the rage still there, but redirected, focused elsewhere. Moretti. The name came out like a curse. This has Antonio Moretti's fingerprints all over it. Elaborate, cruel, designed to cause maximum damage while keeping his hands clean. He stood abruptly, began pacing. Sophia wasn't just my wife. She was the daughter of Judge Richard Castellano, no relation to Vincent, different family entirely. Her father was one of the few honest judges left in the city. The Morettis had been trying to compromise him for years, but he wouldn't bend. Maya felt cold understanding settle in her bones. They killed her to send a message. To send several messages. Dario's voice was hard as granite. To her father, this is what happens when you don't cooperate. To me, we can reach your family any time we want. To the city, Romano isn't untouchable anymore. He slammed his hand against the desk. And I fell for it. I raged at a dead man who was just another victim. I mourned my wife while the people who actually killed her walked free. I wasted 7 months on grief when I should have been planning vengeance. You didn't know. I should have known. The words exploded out of him. This is my world. Reading between the lies, seeing the angles, detecting the setups, that's how I've survived this long. But I was too consumed by loss to think clearly. Too focused on my pain to see the bigger picture. He turned to Maya, and she saw something new in his face. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. Your brother called you minutes before the crash. That means he wasn't drunk, wasn't reckless. He was following orders while trying to warn you. Yes. And after the crash, he disappeared. No body found, no sightings, nothing. Dario's eyes narrowed. The Morettas cleaned up their loose end. Your brother didn't flee, he was killed to ensure his silence. The words Maya had suspected but never let herself fully believe hit like a physical blow. She'd spent 7 months hoping Lucas had somehow escaped, was hiding somewhere, might one day contact her. But deep down, she'd always known. Men like the Morettas didn't leave witnesses. They killed him, she whispered. After forcing him to, they just killed him. And framed him for murder in the process. Made sure his name would be dirt, that no one would investigate too closely, that his family. Dario stopped. They left you alive deliberately. Another message. The sister of the killer, surviving with the guilt. Perfect. Maya felt her legs give out. She sank into the chair, the weight of 7 months finally crushing her. I came here to help Valentina because I thought it would matter. I thought if I could ease her pain, it would balance what Lucas was forced to do. But none of it matters, does it? Because the people who actually caused this are still out there, still untouched, still. Not for long. Dario's voice carried lethal promise. The Morettas made a mistake. They thought killing your brother and framing him would end it cleanly. They didn't account for you surviving. Searching. Finding your way into my house. He sat across from her, and for the first time since the confrontation began, looked at her with outrage clouding his vision. You said you came here to help my daughter. Was that the only reason? Maya met his eyes. No. I also came because I needed to see her. To know if she was surviving. To understand what my family's name, even though we didn't choose it, had cost. She wiped tears from her face. And maybe part of me hoped that if you found out and killed me, at least it would be justice of some kind. At least the debt would be paid. The debt isn't yours, Dario said quietly. Your brother didn't choose to crash that truck any more than my wife chose to die in it. You and we're both casualties in someone else's war. The words hung between them, fragile as spider silk. Not absolution, neither of them had earned that yet. But acknowledgement. The beginning of something that might, eventually, resemble understanding. What happens now? Maya asked. Dario stood, moved to his desk, and pulled out his phone. Now I call in every favor I'm owed. I dig into the Moretti operation until I find proof of what they did. And when I have enough evidence to bury them, his smile was cold as winter. I make them pay for every life they destroyed. Your brother's. My wife's. The 7 months my daughter spent drowning in trauma because I was too blind to see the truth. And me. Maya's voice barely rose above a whisper. Am I allowed to stay? Dario looked at her for a long moment, weighing options she couldn't see. Valentina screamed herself hoarse, begging me not to hurt you. That was the most she's spoken since the accident. The most emotion she's shown. The most fight she's had in her. He sat on the edge of his desk. My daughter is healing because of you. I won't undo that progress because of crimes neither of you committed. Relief flooded through Maya so intensely it felt like drowning. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. His voice hardened. This doesn't mean I trust you completely. It means I'm willing to consider that we were both manipulated by the same enemy. But trust, real trust, is earned over time. You'll continue working with Valentina, but under supervision. Cameras in her room, guards outside the door. And if I discover you've lied about anything, if there's even a hint of deception. There isn't, Maya said firmly. I swear on Lucas's memory, everything I told you is the truth. Dario studied her face, looking for cracks in the facade. Whatever he found seemed to satisfy him, because he nodded slowly. Then we have an arrangement. You help my daughter heal. I find proof that Moretti killed your brother and my wife. And together, his smile was sharp enough to cut. We make sure justice finally gets served, even if we have to deliver it ourselves. He extended his hand. Maya stared at it for a moment, this hand that had held a gun to her chest an hour ago, that belonged to one of the most dangerous men in the city, that was now offering something that looked almost like partnership. She took it. His grip was firm, warm, and for just a second, Maya felt the strange sensation of being seen, not as Lucas Rivers's guilty sister, not as the maid who shouldn't matter, but as someone who'd survived the same storm and was still standing. One more thing, Dario said, not releasing her hand. Valentina can never know about this. Not about your brother, not about the connection. Not until she's older and stronger and can handle that complexity. Agreed, Maya whispered. Good. He finally let go. Now get some rest. Tomorrow my daughter will want to paint, and you look like you've been through hell. Maya stood on shaking legs and moved toward the door. Her hand was on the handle when Dario spoke again. Maya. She turned. Your brother, Lucas. From what you've told me, he sounds like he was trying to protect you the only way he knew how. That's not cowardice. That's love. Dario's expression was unreadable. For what it's worth, I understand that choice. I would have made the same one if someone threatened Valentina. The unexpected kindness broke something in Maya's chest. She nodded, unable to speak, and fled the office before the tears could start again. Behind her, Dario Romano stood alone in his office, holding a dead man's notebook, and began planning the kind of vengeance that would remind the city why his name inspired fear. The Morettas had made a mistake. They'd left survivors. And survivors, given time and purpose, became the most dangerous enemies of all. The morning after the revelation, Maya woke expecting termination or worse. Instead, she found a note slipped under her door in Dario's precise handwriting. Valentina is asking for you. Don't make her wait. The mansion felt different in the dawn light. Guards still patrolled, staff still moved with careful efficiency, but something had shifted in the atmosphere, as if the house itself was exhaling after holding its breath for 7 months. Maya knocked softly on Valentina's door, her stomach tight with uncertainty. The girl's voice came immediately, "Come in." Inside, Valentina sat at her adaptive desk, wearing pajamas decorated with stars, her hair uncombed but her eyes bright with an alertness Maya hadn't seen before. On her lap sat the yellow sun painting from their first session, creased from being held. You came back, Valentina said, and the relief in her voice made Maya's throat close. I promised I would. Maya set down the bag she'd brought, supplies she'd purchased during the sleepless hours before dawn. And I don't break promises to people I care about. Papa said you had to talk about grown-up things last night. Valentina's ancient eyes studied Maya's face. He looked scary when he came to say goodnight. Did he yell at you? A little, Maya admitted, sitting beside her. But we worked it out. Sometimes grown-ups have to yell before they can hear each other properly. Valentina considered this with the seriousness of someone much older. Mama used to say Papa yells because he cares too much and doesn't know how else to show it. The casual mention of Sophia, the first time Valentina had spoken her mother's name in Maya's presence, landed like a gift and a wound simultaneously. Maya reached out and gently squeezed the girl's hand. Your mama sounds like she was very wise. She was. Valentina's voice dropped to a whisper. Do you think she'd be mad that I'm starting to feel okay sometimes? Like I'm forgetting her if I'm not sad all the time? Maya's heart cracked open. She knelt beside the wheelchair, meeting Valentina at eye level. I think your mama would want you to feel okay. I think she'd be proud that you're surviving something so hard. Being happy doesn't mean you're forgetting. It means you're honoring her by living the life she wanted you to have. Tears welled in Valentina's eyes, but she nodded. That's what I hoped. But I wasn't sure. Now you can be sure. Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a package wrapped in plain brown paper. I made you something. It's not fancy, and it's probably a little wonky because I'm not great at sewing, but I thought you might like it. Valentina's hands trembled as she unwrapped it. Inside was a teddy bear, small enough to fit in her lap, sewn from soft fabric in cream and gold. One ear sat slightly higher than the other, giving it a lopsided charm. Around its neck was a tiny scarf embroidered with a single word, hope. You made this. Valentina's voice was barely audible. Last night. I couldn't sleep, so I figured I'd do something useful. Maya touched the bear's misshapen ear. I know it's not perfect. It's perfect because it's not perfect. Valentina clutched the bear to her chest, tears streaming freely now. Like me. Broken but still here. Not broken, Maya corrected gently. Healing. There's a difference. For a long moment, they sat in comfortable silence while Valentina held hope and Maya held the space for grief and joy to coexist. Outside the window, morning light painted the gardens in shades of gold, the same garden Sophia had walked through, the same earth that held her now. Finally, Valentina spoke. Can we paint today? I want to try something harder. What did you have in mind? Hands. Valentina looked at her own hands, one stronger than the other, both trembling slightly from nerve damage. I want to paint hands holding each other. Like they're not letting go even when it's hard. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. That sounds beautiful. And hard. Want to try it together? Together, Valentina agreed, and the word felt like a promise. They spent the morning experimenting with adapted brushes Maya had ordered, ones with thick grips for Valentina's weaker hand, weighted handles for better control. The first attempts were frustrating. Paint spilled, lines wobbled, Valentina's hand cramped and she had to stop to stretch. But slowly, shapes emerged. Two hands, fingers intertwined, rendered in shades of blue and gold. Not anatomically perfect, but emotionally true, the kind of hands that held on when letting go would be easier. Who are they? Maya asked as Valentina added shadows to make the hands look three-dimensional. Everyone who didn't let go. Valentina's voice was thoughtful. Mama holding me when I was scared. Papa carrying me after the accident even though I screamed. You staying even when I threw things. She paused, then added quietly, and me, holding on to all of them even though it hurt sometimes. Maya had to look away, blinking hard. This child, this impossibly brave child, understood things about survival that most adults never learned. By afternoon, Valentina was exhausted but glowing. She'd painted 3 pieces, eaten lunch without prompting, and even laughed when Maya accidentally got paint in her own hair. The sound of that laughter, pure and unself-conscious, drew staff members to pause in the hallway, marveling at the miracle happening behind the closed door. Dario stood in his usual spot outside Valentina's room, watching through the crack in the door. He'd been there for 20 minutes, work abandoned, meetings rescheduled. Watching his daughter laugh. Watching Maya guide her hand with infinite patience. Watching the impossible unfold in real time. Marcus approached quietly. Boss, the Moretti investigation. We found something. Later, Dario said, not taking his eyes off the scene inside. It's important. I said later. Dario's tone left no room for argument. Right now, my daughter is laughing. Everything else can wait. Marcus retreated, and Dario allowed himself a moment of something that felt dangerously close to peace. Yesterday, he'd held a gun to Maya Rivers's chest. Today, she was teaching his daughter to hold on when letting go would be easier. The shift was disorienting. All his life, Dario had operated in absolutes: loyalty or betrayal, ally or enemy, mercy or vengeance. But Maya existed in some gray space he didn't have language for. She was Lucas Rivers's sister and Valentina's savior. She was complicit by blood and innocent by choice. She was dangerous and essential, a threat and a miracle. And somewhere in the last 24 hours, watching her fight for his daughter's healing with the same ferocity he brought to protecting his empire, Dario had stopped seeing her as a problem to solve and started seeing her as something else entirely. Someone worth protecting. Someone who belonged. The realization unsettled him more than any business deal gone wrong or territory dispute ever had. That evening, after Valentina had been settled for the night by the nurse, clutching hope and surrounded by her paintings, Dario found Maya in the kitchen helping Lucia prepare the next day's meals. The staff scattered when he entered, suddenly remembering urgent tasks elsewhere. Maya straightened, wiping flour from her hands. "Mr. Romano." "Dario," he corrected, surprising himself. "When it's just us, you can call me Dario." She blinked, caught off guard. "That doesn't seem appropriate." "Nothing about this situation is appropriate." He leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted. "You're the sister of the man blamed for killing my wife, you've saved my daughter when experts couldn't, and yesterday I nearly had you executed. I think we're past formalities." A smile tugged at Maya's lips, small but genuine. "Fair point. Dario then." Hearing his name in her voice did something strange to his chest. He pushed the sensation aside and focused on why he'd come looking for her. "The bear. Hope. Where did you learn to sew like that?" "My mother taught me before," Maya paused. "Before everything fell apart. She said making things with your hands was how you kept yourself human when the world tried to make you hard." Was she right? "I don't know yet." Maya met his eyes. "But sewing that bear last night, knowing I might not live to see Valentina open it, felt like the most human thing I've done in 7 months. So maybe." Dario studied her face in the kitchen's warm light, the exhaustion around her eyes, the paint still smudged on her wrist, the quiet strength that radiated from someone who'd survived impossible things and kept going anyway. She looked nothing like Sophia, who'd been elegant and polished, always perfect. Maya was rough edges and raw honesty, beautiful in the way survivors were beautiful, scarred but unbroken. "She called you her friend today," Dario said quietly. "Valentina. She told the nurse that you were her friend and that friends don't leave." "I won't leave," Maya promised. "Not unless you tell me to." "I'm not going to tell you to leave." The words came out more certain than he'd expected. "You've become essential to my daughter's recovery. That makes you essential to me." Something flickered in Maya's eyes, surprise, maybe, or hope. "Even knowing who my brother was?" "Especially knowing." Dario moved closer, close enough to see the flecks of amber in her brown eyes. "Your brother was forced to hurt my family while trying to protect his own. You're choosing to heal my daughter while carrying guilt that isn't yours. That's not betrayal, Maya. That's courage I'm not sure I could match." Her breath caught. For a moment, they stood in the kitchen surrounded by the smell of rising dough and simmering sauce, the domestic warmth at odds with the tension crackling between them. Dario felt it, that dangerous pull toward someone he shouldn't want, couldn't afford to need, but who'd somehow become crucial to his world's fragile reconstruction. "I should go," Maya whispered, but she didn't move. "Probably," Dario agreed, but he didn't step back. The moment stretched, taut as a wire, until Lucia's voice broke it. "Mr. Romano, your phone is ringing off the hook in the study." Dario stepped back smoothly, the professional mask sliding into place. "Thank you, Lucia. I'll take care of it." He looked at Maya one last time. Tomorrow, Valentina wants to paint in the gardens. The physical therapist thinks it might be good for her, being outside. I'd like you there. Of course. Maya's voice was steadier than her hands. I'll be there. As Dario left the kitchen, he heard Lucia mutter prayers in Italian, blessings or warnings, he couldn't tell. Maybe both. Back in his study, surrounded by evidence of the empire he'd built and the enemies he'd destroyed, Dario Romano sat at his desk and acknowledged a truth he'd been avoiding: Maya Rivers was becoming more than his daughter's caretaker. She was becoming someone he trusted. Someone he respected. Someone who made him wonder if maybe, eventually, healing wasn't just possible for Valentina but for him too. The thought was dangerous. In his world, caring about someone gave your enemies leverage. But as he looked at the security feed showing Valentina sleeping peacefully with hope clutched in her arms, Dario decided that some dangers were worth the risk. Tomorrow, they would paint in the gardens. Tomorrow, his daughter would smile in the sunlight. Tomorrow, the impossible would continue. And Dario Romano would stand guard over the fragile miracle that had taken root in his house of shadows, protecting it with everything he had, even from himself. The pre-dawn darkness of the Romano mansion carried a different quality than ordinary night, thicker, weighted with the kind of silence that preceded disaster. Maya woke to it at 4:47 a.m., pulled from restless sleep by instinct older than reason. Something was wrong. She dressed quickly and stepped into the hallway. The night guards were at their posts, the security lights cast their usual pools of illumination, but the air hummed with a tension she couldn't name. Maya moved toward Valentina's room, her bare feet silent on marble floors. The door stood open. The wheelchair was gone. Valentina. Maya's voice came out steady despite the ice flooding her veins. No answer. She checked the bathroom, empty. The closet, untouched. The bed showed signs of recent occupation, blankets thrown back hastily. Maya ran. Down the hallway, taking stairs two at a time, past startled guards who were just beginning to realize something had breached their perfect security. She burst into the main foyer where Marcus was already barking orders into his radio. Lock down the perimeter. Check all exits. Get Mr. Romano. Where is she? Maya grabbed Marcus's arm. Where's Valentina? We don't know. Her chair's gone, her room's empty. Marcus's professional calm was cracking. Someone either took her or she went somewhere on her own, but either way. The gardens. Maya was already moving. She's been asking about her mother's grave. She wanted to visit but Dario said not yet, said she wasn't ready. The grave is a quarter-mile from the house. She can't wheel herself that far, not with her strength. She can if she's determined enough. Maya was running again, through the kitchen, out the service door, into the pre-dawn garden where morning mist clung to perfectly manicured hedges like ghosts. Behind her, the mansion erupted into controlled chaos. Lights blazed on, guards mobilized, security protocols activated. But Maya barely heard it. She ran through the garden paths, past marble fountains and rose beds, toward the private cemetery at the estate's edge where 3 generations of Romanos rested beneath Italian marble. The sky was just beginning to lighten, that brief moment between night and day when the world held its breath. Maya's lungs burned, her feet ached, but she didn't slow until she saw the small figure in the wheelchair, motionless beneath an oak tree, facing a headstone carved with angels. Valentina. The girl didn't turn. She sat perfectly still, her small hands gripping the wheelchair's armrests, her thin shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Hope the bear lay in her lap, abandoned. Maya approached slowly, carefully, the way you approach something wild and wounded. Hey. Everyone's looking for you. You scared us. I wanted to see her. Valentina's voice was small and broken. Mama. I wanted to tell her I'm sorry. Sorry for what? Maya knelt beside the wheelchair, mindful not to startle the girl. For still being here. The words came out choked. For living when she didn't. For starting to feel okay when she's still gone. For laughing yesterday when she can't laugh anymore. Valentina finally turned, her face streaked with tears. I wanted to be with her. I thought maybe if I came here in the dark, I could figure out how to. No. Maya's voice was firm, brooking no argument. Whatever you're thinking, no. You don't get to leave. Not like that. Why not? The anguish in Valentina's voice could have shattered stone. Everyone keeps saying I'm brave for surviving, but I didn't choose to survive. I just didn't die. And now I'm stuck here broken, useless, while Mama is. Your mother is not here. Maya gestured to the headstone. This is just stone and earth. Your mother, the real her, the part that matters, she's not in the ground. Then where is she? Valentina sobbed. Everyone says she's in heaven, or she's at peace, or she's watching over me, but I can't feel her. I can't talk to her. She's just gone and I'm still here and I don't know how to. Maya pulled Valentina into a fierce embrace, letting the girl cry against her shoulder the way she probably hadn't been allowed to cry since the accident. No platitudes, no false comfort, just presence, solid and warm and alive in the cold dawn. You're right, Maya said quietly. She is gone. And that's not fair, and it's not okay, and nothing anyone says will make it hurt less. But Valentina, she pulled back to look the girl in the eyes. You don't need to walk to carry her. You don't need to go where she is. Your mother is already inside you, in every painting you make, every smile you give, every moment you choose to keep living even when it's hard. That's how you keep her. Not by being here in the dark, but by being brave in the light. But it hurts, Valentina whispered. Being brave hurts so much. I know. God, I know. Maya wiped tears from the girl's face with gentle thumbs. My brother is gone too, remember? And some days it hurts so bad I can barely breathe. But we keep breathing anyway, because that's what they'd want. Not for us to follow them into the dark, but to live loud enough for both of us. Valentina was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, is that why you help me? Because you're living loud for your brother. Partly, Maya admitted. And partly because you remind me that surviving impossible things doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're strong in ways other people can't understand. I don't feel strong. Strong people rarely do. That's how you know it's real. Maya stood and moved behind the wheelchair. Come on. Your father is probably losing his mind, and the guards think you've been kidnapped. Let's go show them you're okay. Wait. Valentina reached out and touched the headstone one last time. Mama, I'm sorry I left without saying goodbye. But I think Maya's right. I think you're not really here. I think you're in me, and that means I get to carry you wherever I go. Her voice strengthened. I'll make you proud. I promise. I'll keep living loud. The sun broke over the horizon then, spilling golden light across the cemetery, and for just a moment the world felt less heavy. Maya wheeled Valentina back toward the mansion, moving slowly through gardens coming alive with morning birdsong. They were halfway back when Dario appeared on the path, flanked by guards, his hair uncombed, his shirt untucked, the first time Maya had seen him anything less than perfectly controlled. When he saw Valentina, relief crashed across his face so violently it looked like pain. Valentina. He covered the distance in seconds, dropping to his knees beside the wheelchair. God, Valentina, you can't do that, you can't just leave. I'm sorry, Papa. Valentina's voice was small. I wanted to talk to Mama. Dario's hands shook as he checked her over, making sure she was real, unharmed, still here. Then he looked up at Maya, and the gratitude in his eyes was so raw it felt like being seen without skin. You found her. She wasn't lost, Maya said gently. Just visiting someone important. Dario stood, and for a moment he looked like he might fall. Maya moved without thinking, her hand finding his arm, steadying him. The contact lasted only a second before he pulled away, composing himself, rebuilding the walls that had briefly crumbled. "Inside," he ordered, his voice rough. "Everyone inside. Now." The procession back to the mansion was silent. Guards surrounded them like a military escort, while staff members lined the entrance with obvious relief. But Maya felt the shift, the way Dario walked closer to her than necessary, the way his hand brushed hers twice as if confirming she was solid and real, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. Not as an employee. Not as the sister of his enemy. As someone who just saved the most important thing in his world. Later that morning, after Valentina had been fed and checked by the doctor and settled back in her room with strict instructions not to leave again without permission, Dario summoned Maya to his study. She went expecting reprimand, for not watching Valentina more closely, for not predicting the girl's flight. Instead, Dario stood at his window, shoulders tense, hands in his pockets. "She could have been taken," he said without turning. "If we had real enemies watching the house, if the Morettas had been smart enough to grab her during the shift change," his voice broke. "I could have lost her. But you didn't." Maya stood near the door, unsure whether to approach. "She's safe. She's okay. Because of you." Dario finally turned, and the vulnerability in his face made her breath catch. Marcus had guards searching the house. The security team was checking perimeter sensors. I was calling in every asset I have, prepared to burn the city down to find her. "And you," he laughed, sharp and bitter. "You just knew. You found her in 5 minutes by understanding what she needed." "I know what it's like to need your family when they're gone," Maya said quietly. "To think that maybe if you get close enough to where they are, you'll figure out how to join them. It's not about being smart or understanding trauma responses. It's just recognizing the language of grief because I speak it too." Dario moved closer, and Maya saw the exhaustion etched around his eyes. "She said you told her that Sophia lives inside her. That she carries her mother everywhere. Is that wrong?" "No." His voice was barely above a whisper. "It's exactly what I should have told her 7 months ago. But I was too consumed by my own grief to see that she needed permission to live. You gave her that. Again." They stood in silence, the study's morning light casting shadows across leather-bound books and polished wood. Maya felt the weight of Dario's gaze like a physical thing, assessing, measuring, seeing her in ways that made her feel exposed and strangely safe all at once. "My daughter asked me this morning if you could stay forever," Dario said finally. "Not just as staff. As family." Maya's heart stuttered. "Dario." "I told her I would think about it." He stepped closer, close enough that Maya could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "But the truth is, I've been thinking about it since yesterday. Since you told me about Lucas. Since you stood in this office and faced execution without flinching. Since you found my daughter in the dark and brought her back to the light." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you've become essential." His hand rose, hesitated, then gently touched her cheek, a gesture so unexpected and tender it made tears spring to her eyes. "Not just to Valentina's healing. To everything. You've reminded me that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when the world is ending and refuse to leave." Maya couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only feel the warmth of his hand, the intensity of his gaze, the impossible intimacy of standing in the lion's den and being seen not as prey but as something precious. "Your world is dangerous," she whispered. "Yes. Your enemies would use me against you. They would try. And we barely know each other. We're connected by tragedy and circumstance, not what?" Dario's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "Not choice? Because I'm choosing this, Maya. I'm choosing to trust you, to protect you, to make you part of this family because you've proven you'd die for my daughter. That's all the knowing I need." The declaration was madness. Too fast, too intense, built on foundations of grief and guilt and circumstances that should have destroyed them both. But standing in Dario Romano's study, his hand gentle on her face, Maya felt something shift into place, a rightness that transcended logic. "I need time," she said, even as her heart screamed to accept immediately. "Take it." Dario stepped back, the professional mask sliding into place though his eyes remained warm. "But know this, you're not staff anymore. You're not the maid who shouldn't matter. You're family, whether you accept the title or not. And in my world, family is protected at all costs." Maya left the study feeling like she'd been unmade and rebuilt in the span of a conversation. Behind her, Dario Romano stood alone, acknowledging the truth he could no longer deny. This woman who'd entered his house carrying secrets and guilt had somehow become the center of his broken world's reconstruction. And whether it was wise or reckless, healing or destruction, he would protect her with everything he had. Because impossible things had a way of becoming necessary. And Maya Rivers had become as necessary as breathing. The scandal broke on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after Valentina's pre-dawn flight to her mother's grave. Someone, a disgruntled former staff member, Dario's investigators would later discover, sold a story to the tabloids: Mafia Boss's paralyzed daughter raised by sister of woman's killer. The headline was designed for maximum damage, and it worked. By evening, news trucks lined the street outside the Romano estate's gates. Reporters shouted questions at anyone entering or leaving. Social media erupted with outrage, sympathy, confusion, 1,000 voices demanding to know how Dario Romano could allow the sister of his wife's murderer near his traumatized child. Inside the mansion, Maya stood in her room staring at her phone, reading the vitriol aimed at her. Gold digger. Manipulator. Guilty by association. Some comments were worse, suggesting she'd orchestrated the accident herself, that she was grooming Valentina for some long-term scheme. A knock at her door. Lucia entered without waiting for permission, her face set in fierce determination. "Don't read those lies," the cook ordered, snatching the phone from Maya's hands. "Those people don't know you. They don't know what you've done for that child. They know my brother killed Mrs. Romano." Maya's voice was hollow. "That's all they need to know. Your brother was forced. Mr. Romano knows this. Valentina knows this. The rest of the world can go." Lucia switched to Italian, words so colorful they needed no translation. "You are staying. We need you." But Maya had already decided. She couldn't let Valentina suffer more because of her presence. Couldn't let Dario's reputation, his business, his safety, be compromised by defending her. The kindest thing, the right thing, was to disappear the way she'd planned before everything became complicated. She was packing when Dario found her. "What are you doing?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "Leaving." Maya continued folding clothes with shaking hands. "Before this gets worse. Before they come after Valentina because of me." "They won't come after Valentina. You don't know that." She turned to face him. "Dario, I'm a liability now. Everyone knows who I am, what my connection is to your family's tragedy. Staying here makes you look weak or foolish or both. I won't do that to you. You think I care what they think?" Dario moved into the small room, his presence filling the space. "You think their opinions matter more than my daughter's healing? Your daughter will keep healing. She's strong enough now. She asked for you this morning. She said if you leave, she'll know it's her fault for needing you too much." Dario's jaw clenched. "Are you really going to abandon her to save my reputation?" The accusation hit like a slap. Maya's hands stilled on the half-packed suitcase. "That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. But you don't get to decide for us, for me and Valentina, that protecting us means leaving. That's not your choice to make. Then what do you want me to do?" Maya's voice broke. "Stay while reporters camp outside? While your enemies use me as leverage? while Valentina reads articles calling me her mother's killer. I want you to trust me. Dario closed the distance between them. There's a charity gala tomorrow night. The annual Romano Foundation event, 500 guests, every major family in the city, press coverage. I'm expected to make an appearance, give a speech. He paused. I want you there. Not as staff. As my guest. Maya stared at him. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Dario, that would be like painting a target on both our backs. Your rivals will see it as weakness, your allies will question your judgment, and the press will. Let them. His hand found hers, warm and solid. Let them see that I don't hide what matters. Let them understand that Maya Rivers is under my protection, part of my family, and anyone who threatens her threatens me. This is insane, Maya whispered, but she didn't pull her hand away. Probably. Dario's smile was sharp as a blade. But I've built an empire on being underestimated. Let them think I've gone soft. They'll learn the truth when it's too late. Maya looked at their joined hands, at the man who'd held a gun to her chest and was now offering public alliance, at the impossible situation that had somehow become her life. Every logical part of her screamed to refuse, to run, to protect them both by disappearing. But Valentina's voice echoed in her mind. Promise you won't leave. One condition, Maya said finally. If this backfires, if staying puts Valentina in danger, I walk away. No arguments. Agreed. Dario squeezed her hand. But it won't backfire. Trust me. Maya wasn't sure she did. But she unpacked her suitcase anyway. The Romano Foundation Gala was held at the Plaza Hotel, its grand ballroom transformed into something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling floral arrangements, champagne flowing like water. 500 of New York's most powerful people mingled in designer gowns and custom suits, their conversations weighted with the currency of influence and obligation. Maya stood near the entrance feeling like an imposter. The dress Dario had sent to her room was beautiful, deep emerald silk that made her skin glow, elegant without being ostentatious, but she felt exposed, visible in ways she'd spent 7 months trying to avoid. Breathe, Dario murmured beside her. He wore a black tuxedo that made him look like something carved from midnight, dangerous and beautiful in equal measure. They're watching you because you're stunning, not because they know who you are. They will soon enough. Maya had seen the press line outside, the cameras waiting to document every arrival. Let them look. Dario offered his arm. Ready. Maya took it, and together they entered the ballroom. The reaction was immediate. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Maya felt the weight of hundreds of eyes assessing, judging, trying to place her. Dario guided her through the crowd with practiced ease, introducing her simply, "This is Maya Rivers." No explanation, no apology, just her name spoken with the kind of authority that discouraged questions. Most people were gracious, offering polite hellos and empty pleasantries. But Maya could see the calculations behind their eyes, the way they glanced between her and Dario trying to understand the connection. They'd made it halfway through the room when a voice cut through the chatter. Dario Romano. The crowd parted. A man in his 60s approached, silver hair, expensive suit, face carved with the kind of hardness that came from decades of surviving in dangerous waters. Maya recognized him from news coverage, Antonio Moretti, head of the Moretti family. Dario's arm tensed beneath Maya's hand, but his expression remained pleasant. Antonio. Didn't expect to see you here. I could say the same. Moretti's eyes slid to Maya, sharp and assessing. Though I'm more surprised by your companion. Should I know you, young lady? Maya Rivers, she said, keeping her voice steady. Rivers. Moretti's lips curved in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That name sounds familiar. Where have I heard it before? The ballroom had gone silent. Everyone was watching now, sensing blood in the water. Perhaps from the news, another voice interjected. A younger man, Moretti's son, Maya realized, stepped forward with a tablet. Maya Rivers, sister of Lucas Rivers. The man who killed Dario's wife in a drunk driving incident 7 months ago. He looked up, feigning surprise. Oh, this is awkward. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Camera flashes erupted from the press corner. Maya felt the world tilting, felt every eye in the room burning into her skin. Dario. Moretti's voice dripped false concern. Surely you didn't know about this? That you're keeping the sister of your wife's killer in your home? Near your daughter? The accusation hung in the air like poison. Dario's jaw tightened, and Maya felt him preparing to respond with violence or words that would end careers. She started to pull away, to apologize, to run, to remove herself before this destroyed everything. Dario's hand covered hers, keeping her in place. I knew, he said clearly, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom. I've known for weeks. And yes, Maya is in my home. Near my daughter. Because she's family. More gasps. Moretti's smile widened. Family? The sister of your wife's murderer is family. Lucas Rivers didn't murder my wife. Dario's voice hardened to steel. He was forced to drive a truck with severed brake lines by men who threatened to kill his sister if he refused. He was a victim, not a criminal. And the people who actually orchestrated my wife's death, his eyes locked on Moretti. They're standing in this room right now. The temperature in the ballroom dropped 20 degrees. Moretti's smile vanished. Careful, Dario. Accusations without proof are dangerous. I have proof. Dario pulled out his phone, held it up so the screens in the ballroom could display what he showed. Documents appeared on the screens, bank transfers, intercepted communications, testimony from a warehouse worker who'd been present when Lucas was threatened. Evidence that Dario's investigators had compiled over 3 weeks, showing how the Moretti family had orchestrated the accident to weaken Dario's position and send a message to Judge Castellano. You used an innocent man as a weapon, Dario continued, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. You threatened his sister's life to force his compliance. You cut his brake lines knowing he'd have no choice but to crash. And when my wife died and my daughter was crippled, you celebrated your successful strike against the Romano family. Moretti's face had gone white, then red. This is fantasy. Desperate fiction from a man who can't accept that his wife died in a random accident. There was nothing random about it. Dario stepped forward, and the crowd instinctively moved back. You killed Sophia to hurt me and her father. You destroyed Lucas Rivers to cover your tracks. And you left Maya alive because you thought her guilt would be punishment enough. His voice dropped to something lethal. You were wrong. You have no proof. I have enough proof to make your life very difficult, Dario interrupted. Enough to interest the FBI, the state attorney, and several judges who owe me favors. Enough to make your operations uncomfortable and your allies nervous. He smiled, cold as winter. But more importantly, I have something you didn't count on. I have the sister of the man you murdered, alive and willing to testify. I have her brother's notebook documenting your threats. And I have my daughter, who's learning to trust again, to hope again, because Maya Rivers chose healing over hatred. He turned to address the room, his voice carrying absolute authority. So let me be clear to everyone here. Maya Rivers is not my servant. She's not an employee who can be dismissed or a liability to be managed. She's family. She saved my daughter when no one else could. She carries guilt for crimes she didn't commit. And she's under my protection, which means she's under the Romano family's protection. Dario's gaze swept the crowd, landing on faces of allies and enemies alike. Anyone who threatens her, anyone who speaks against her, Anyone who questions her place in my home will answer to me. Are we understood? The silence was absolute. Even Moretti seemed at a loss for words, his careful trap turned back against him. Then from the ballroom entrance, a small voice rang out. Maya. Every head turned. Valentina Romano sat in her wheelchair at the doorway, Lucia behind her, the girl's face bright with determination. She wore a blue dress that matched her mother's favorite color, and in her lap sat Hope the bear. Valentina, Dario started. I wanted to come. Valentina wheeled herself forward with the strength she'd been building over weeks of painting and therapy and slowly learning to trust her body again. Lucia said there were mean people saying bad things about Maya, and I wanted them to see me. She stopped in front of Maya, looked up with those ancient eyes, and spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. Maya didn't hurt me. She saved me. She's the reason I can paint again and laugh again and remember that Mama would want me to be happy. Valentina's voice strengthened. Before Maya, I wanted to disappear. Now I want to live loud. That's not something a bad person does. That's something family does. Maya dropped to her knees, tears streaming freely. Valentina, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. Valentina hugged her fiercely. You didn't let go of me when it was hard. I'm not letting go of you either. The ballroom erupted. Some with applause, some with continued gasps, some with a flash of cameras documenting the impossible scene. The Mafia Boss, his paralyzed daughter, and the woman who shouldn't exist all standing together against a room full of judgment. Dario moved to join them, his hand finding Maya's shoulder. When he spoke, his voice carried a warmth reserved only for family. So, are we clear about where Maya Rivers stands in my household? More applause, this time genuine. Even Moretti had the sense to retreat, his trap sprung back against him, his careful manipulation exposed. He left the gala with his son, and several of his known associates followed, a visible fracturing of power that Dario's allies would notice and exploit. But Maya barely registered any of it. She knelt on the ballroom floor holding Valentina, feeling Dario's solid presence behind her, and finally understood what he'd been trying to tell her. Family wasn't about blood or circumstances or deserving. It was about showing up when the world ended and refusing to leave. Later that night, after the gala had ended and Valentina had been settled back home with Lucia, Maya stood in the garden where she'd found the girl weeks before. The city lights cast a soft glow over the carefully maintained hedges and flowers, turning everything silver and shadow. Dario found her there, his tuxedo jacket draped over his arm, his tie loosened. He stood beside her in comfortable silence, both of them processing the evening's revelations. You exposed Moretti publicly, Maya said finally. That's dangerous. Everything I do is dangerous. Dario's voice carried a note of amusement. But now he can't touch you without making my accusations look credible. He's trapped by his own visibility. And the FBI? Were you serious about that? Completely. I've been feeding them information for weeks. He glanced at her. Your brother's notebook, once properly authenticated, will be key evidence in a racketeering case. Lucas Rivers will be remembered as a victim, not a criminal. The gift of that, the restoration of her brother's name, hit Maya so hard she had to grip the garden wall for support. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. Thank yourself for surviving long enough to tell the truth. Dario moved closer, his warmth a comfort against the cool night air. I meant what I said in there. You're family now. Not because of Valentina, though she's part of it. Because you've proven you belong in ways that go beyond blood. Maya turned to face him, this man who'd nearly killed her and was now defending her to the world. I don't know how to do this. How to be part of a family again. How to trust that it won't all fall apart. Neither do I, Dario admitted. I've spent my whole life building walls, keeping people at a distance, trusting no one completely. But Valentina's learning to hope again. Maybe it's time I did too. He reached out, his hand cupping her face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so dangerous. Stay. Not because my daughter needs you, though she does. Stay because I'm asking you to. Because this broken family of ours works better with you in it. Maya leaned into his touch, feeling the weight of 7 months, 7 months of grief and guilt and impossible circumstances, finally begin to lift. I'm terrified, she confessed. Good. So am I. His smile was soft, real, the kind reserved for moments when walls came down. We'll be terrified together. And there in the garden where Valentina had once sought her mother's grave, where Maya had found her and brought her back to the light, 2 people who'd been destroyed by the same crime began the fragile work of becoming whole. Not through forgetting. Not through pretending the past didn't exist. But through the radical act of choosing family despite everything that should have made it impossible. 6 months later. The Romano garden looked different in spring. Flowers bloomed in riots of color, and the fountain that had run dry for years now sparkled in the sunlight. Valentina sat at her easel, painting the scene with brushes specially designed for her improving hand strength. She wasn't alone. Maya sat beside her, working on her own canvas, a portrait of Lucas she'd finally felt strong enough to attempt. And behind them, leaning against the garden wall with a rare expression of peace, stood Dario. The tulips are crooked, Valentina announced, studying her work critically. Tulips in real life are crooked, Maya countered. You're just being honest. Mama used to say honesty was harder than lying because you couldn't hide from it. Your mama was very wise. Maya added shadows to Lucas's face, finally able to remember him without the crushing weight of guilt. I think she'd be proud of how brave you've become. I think she'd be proud of you too. Valentina glanced at Maya with a smile that was pure mischief. For making Papa less scary. I heard that, Dario called from his spot. I know. Valentina giggled, a sound that had become common enough to be ordinary, miraculous enough to still take Maya's breath away. Later, when Valentina had been called inside for physical therapy, Dario joined Maya on the garden bench. The Moretti case was ongoing, Antonio under investigation, his empire crumbling, his son already cooperating with authorities. Lucas Rivers's name had been formally cleared, his story told in newspapers that once branded him a killer. I got something for you, Dario said, handing Maya an envelope. Inside was a deed. To the house in Newark where she and Lucas had lived. Paid off, transferred into her name, along with a trust fund established in Lucas's memory for families affected by organized crime. Dario. It's not charity, he said quickly. It's acknowledgement. Your brother was forced to do something terrible while trying to save someone he loved. The least I can do is make sure his memory means something. Maya pressed the envelope to her chest, tears streaming. How do I repay this? You already have. Dario's arms slid around her shoulders, pulling her close. You gave me my daughter back. You gave me permission to hope. You gave this family a reason to heal. He kissed her temple gently. That's not a debt. That's just love. The word hung between them, terrifying and perfect, too soon and exactly right. Maya turned to face him, seeing in his eyes the same impossible truth she felt in her own heart. They'd been destroyed by the same tragedy. They'd survived the same storm. And somewhere in the wreckage, they'd found something neither expected, a family stitched together not by blood but by choice, not by ease but by the hard work of healing. I love you too, Maya whispered. Even though it's completely insane. Especially because it's insane. Dario smiled, the real smile, the one reserved for family. Nothing about us makes sense. But neither did healing, and we did that anyway. From inside the house, Valentina's laughter rang out. Hope sat on the windowsill, watching over them like the promise its name suggested. The impossible had been done. The woman who shouldn't exist had become essential. The Mafia boss who trusted no one had learned to hope. And the paralyzed daughter who'd wanted to disappear had learned to live loud. Not perfectly. Not easily. But together. Always together. And in the Romano garden, where spring bloomed eternal and the past rested peacefully with the present, a broken family learned what it meant to be whole.